ladies and gentlemen. It's a show, it's a Ukrainian talk show, which also includes Russia and China. And now, obviously, it has to include Israel. And my name is Sasha Star. And I have a great guest today. It's Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Oh, thank you, Sasha. Glad to be here.
Great to have you, as always, my pleasure. And what's happened as a completely unrelated episode to Ukraine, which was a massacre, a heinous attack on October 7th by Hamas against Israel. Now, almost 2 weeks later, it's becoming almost part of the world mosaic of international relationships. And it appears to me that you, for certainly, that probably 80% that Israel and Ukrainians are fighting the same enemies. It's incredible because there is not much in common between Israel and Ukraine. They're located in different regions completely. But look at, even if you remember Biden's speech yesterday, where he always united the fight of Ukrainians against despicable monster which Russia is, and Israel fighting against despicable Hamas. Uh, Now there is different though that okay, Ukraine is fighting Russia. It doesn't matter that Russia is supported maybe by North Korea or by Iran or wherever else, but they're fighting Russia. Period. With Israel, Hamas obviously attacked Israel. Is Hamas Palestinians? We don't know the answer to that question. They are obviously completely rule Gaza. So to say that they are Hamas and have nothing to do with Gaza Palestinians, this is incredible position that is very difficult to sustain. However, now taking of some assertions by Biden in his yesterday speech. And do you think that he correctly positioned the reason why America has to support both Ukraine and Israel? What do you think, Jonathan?
I was just waiting for the grenade.
There is no one else, Jonathan.
I'm the only one to catch it.
You are the only one.
Yeah, that's right. So in any case, President Biden is, in this case, has in the enemies that he has been presented with, in that Hamas, seeking to exploit what it thought was potential weakness on the part of Western allies for support of Israel, carried out a terroristic attack, and just as Putin miscalculated the response when he attacked Ukraine, so Hamas has miscalculated in the effect of its attack on Israel. It has galvanized, once again, the Western allies and the United States behind the support of both support of both Ukraine and Israel. And has, again, the law of unintended consequences is coming into play here. The Russia and Hamas did not foresee the potential reaction. They miscalculated, and so they have removed any restraint or restraining factors on U.S. support for both Israel and Ukraine, and it is actually a boon to Ukraine, and in taking care of any potential weakness that Russia may have been counting on in, say, going into next year's presidential elections. Again, that strategy that I pointed out to you earlier, similar to that of the Confederacy during the Civil War, hoping for a political election to take care of their problem during the Civil War, that they couldn't achieve on the battlefield. Now you have a situation where Ukraine is finally receiving more advanced weapons, such as ATACMS, and those weapons are having their effect on the battlefield, even though the season is now passing into the late fall and starting to approach the winter season, for which supposedly offensive operations will slow down. But Ukraine's style of offensive operations does not necessarily require good weather in order to carry it out. They have been proceeding and maintaining steady pressure along the entire front. They have also repelled Russia's latest attempt at a counteroffensive a bit near Avdiivka. And now I still contend that an operational victory in terms of severing the Crimea from resupply and reinforcement by Russia is within reach, and within the next few months. It could occur. Contrary to Western consensus opinion, an operational type of victory of that nature could be reached within the next few months during the winter campaign. They would not have to wait for a spring offensive, as Ukraine continues to acquire more advanced weapons. And they are acquiring them piecemeal, to be sure. It's not the ideal situation, but it is now, thanks to the ill-advised attack of Hamas upon Israel. Now it has played into Ukraine's hands and solidified their political support.
Excellent. Yeah. I feel the same way, and now they're using catacombs and quite skillfully, and with great results, I must say.
The Ukrainians have always been seeming to exceed expectations during this entire conflict.
Exactly. So obviously, world's attention, including here in the United States, is heavily involved in Israel, Hamas. I refuse to call it a conflict, but when Hamas did what they did on October 7th, it's not really a conflict. It's aggression very similar to what Russians did against Ukrainians. But you see, if Russia had a goal to take over Ukraine in 3 days or 7 days or a month or whatever, and at least optically, they had a chance to do that, given size of their army, numbers, the weapons, and so on. How Hamas, with a couple of thousand, 5,000, 10,000 murderers, what was their hope against Israel at the best case scenario? What was their best case scenario? There is none. So all they wanted is very simple thing. Number one, to kill as many Jews as possible. That's obviously number one. Number two is create as many pictures for social media to show how they inflicted incredible number of casualties on Jews, how well they've done, so they would get even more financing if they don't have enough, and steer Arab unrest around the world. That's my opinion. And in that case, their attack, you cannot say that it's completely fruitless. I think they've achieved something. They've killed considerable number of Jews, well over 1,000, 1,300 plus. They got some hostages. Some Americans and other nationalities were among killed and taken hostages. They create a huge number of pictures. They incited Israel to stop that certain action that created even more killed, but this time Palestinians. It's unfortunately, it's collateral damage, you may call it that. But that's an unfortunate thing, especially if now they will start a real operation on the ground. You can only imagine how many people could be killed. Although what I've seen is that they are building very similar grounds and practicing almost not even house by house, but the doorstep by doorstep. They're practicing, trying to have a minimum of casualties in this, although it's very, very complicated, and hopefully they would be able to achieve it. But you see, Jonathan, I just don't understand. There are a lot of sympathies, even in America, on the Hamas side, and as a minimum, they're telling that both sides have to talk to each other and stop the atrocities. How can you talk to creatures who slashed innocent small kids, taking hostages a 90 years old woman who is a Holocaust survivor and has number on her hand? How you can talk to them? In my opinion, there is only one way of doing that. It's to eliminate Hamas, all of them, period, 100%, because they're not people. Can you talk to aggressive killer dogs? You don't talk to them, you kill them, eliminate. So Hamas put themselves exactly in the same position. Am I missing something?
No, unfortunately not. And you have again, just as with Russia and Ukraine, with Israel and Hamas, you have two organizations with politically irreconcilable objectives. And one desires that Israel, while Israel does not necessarily want the complete destruction of Hamas, they are certainly willing to do whatever it takes to defend themselves. Hamas desires the destruction of Israel. Given those kinds of political attitudes and objectives, there is no realistic chance for negotiation between the two sides, and Israel may well be forced to impose what I would call a Carthaginian peace. You remember how the Romans used to say, "Carthago delenda est." Carthage must be. One Roman senator pointed out, "Carthage must be destroyed." He
Yeah.
would end every speech of his. He would end with "Carthago delenda est," and in this case, one would not be surprised to find Israeli members, ruling members, declaring the same thing at the end of any speeches they make regarding Hamas. So, and they would be fully justified in doing so, given the horrific acts that Hamas has committed thus far.
You know what's interesting? If you go really back into history, and you're talking about the rights of Israel and Palestine to exist there, but there is another countries that have to insert their rights on this land. If you remember, by year 73, Romans actually took over complete control of Judea and Samaria and all this land, and they wanted to make sure that the Jewish names of this land will be extinguished once and for all for the next 5,000 years. So they came with the name Palestina. Obviously, Palestina, by the sound of it, it's not Arab and it's not Jewish word. It's a Latin word. So how come Italy does not make its attempts to rule this land? They have some grounds. You don't think so?
No. Yeah, but the Italy that exists today has no real ethnic or organizational connection to the Roman Empire. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. That's just way too far, way too much of a stretch. But in any case, you have Hamas with its Hamas and Israel with two organizations with politically irreconcilable objectives, and one is committed to the destruction of the other, and Israel is determined to preserve its own existence as a Jewish state. And so the other side is either going to be forced to accept that or be eliminated. if they
Jonathan, there is a very interesting question that I just had raised in the previous program. The question is that when Israel was created and it was immediately attacked by five countries, it defeated them. However, result of that war was that Egypt on one side and Jordan on the other side, they occupied all parts that were supposed to belong to Palestinians, to new Palestinian state, hopefully. They occupied it, and they occupied it all the way until Six-Day War. So in
yes,
Six-Day
because it began.
War,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so in 6 Days War, it was taken over by Israel,
Right,
but not from Palestinians. It was taken over from Egypt and from Jordan, right?
right.
So, how Palestinians can, in their right mind, insist that this is their land? Because it never been their land.
Nope.
When there was a mandate for both states, Palestinian and Jewish, so Jewish went on and created their own state. And the Palestinians failed to do that because Egypt and Jordan completely controlled that territory. So
And
that,
Israel, in effect, was forced to go on the offensive in order to gain defensible territory and to retain defensible borders.
absolutely.
Once after the 6 Day War, Israel had very defensible borders, and Egypt, yeah, while it had an initial victory in the 1973 war when it successfully breached the Suez Canal and Israeli defenses. Again, Israel had to resort to a vigorous counteroffensive in order to force Egypt and Syria to accept their terms and to accept the fact of Israel's existence. And so Israel has always been in a very precarious position where they must maintain superior offensive forces to any of their potential opponents or a combination thereof. They must be from their perception, they must be able to strike out and preemptively attack and defeat any combination of their opponents. And so given their precarious position and given Israel's dependence upon a strong relationship with the United States, it is again fortunate for Israel and for Ukraine by extension that Hamas did engage in overreach. They miscalculated the effect of their attack. They thought that this would provoke turmoil among the Western allies and be able to further weaken U.S. support for either Israel or Ukraine. And Russia undoubtedly was supporting this attack by Hamas because, again, Putin's desire was to sow chaos among the Western allies and weaken their support for Ukraine. But it has succeeded in doing neither. If you just in terms of sheer economic power or abilities to sustain a conflict, the United States has much more, as much as it is spending on defense, and it is spending a tremendous amount, to be sure. It is still greater staying power than the enemies of Ukraine, and so it's just I just don't see Hamas or Russia even acting, assuming they were able to act in concert with each other, when that's very difficult for them to do, given Russia's limited power projection capability. Yeah, I don't believe that they will be able to sustain this, and I believe that with this additional aid that is being given to Ukraine by the U.S. and NATO, that Ukraine is going to be able to successfully exploit this over the coming winter. And it's not going to remain static. Ukraine has learned its lesson from last year. They recognize that they must keep up the pressure and sustain this, and not just sit in a static position and allow Russia to rebuild and further be able to reassert itself. The abortive Russian counteroffensive up in the eastern part of Ukraine, that presents an opportunity for Ukraine to regain the initiative and keep applying pressure on all sectors of the front. And eventually, uh, Russia, the link will, that operational link between Russia and Crimea will be severed. And it's just a matter of time and a matter of patience and persistence on the part of Ukraine.
What I've noticed, very interesting situation happened with the recent Putin's visit to China to meet Emperor Xi. Prior to that, after the attack on October 7th, Putin, first of all, he expressed his condolences to Netanyahu only on the 10th day after it happened. But interestingly enough, he phoned several times to Jordan, to Qatar, to Egypt, to all Arab leaders in that region, and talked to them several times. And only after that, he phoned Netanyahu. Now, what he was discussing with these Arab leaders, he was discussing the proposal of creation of two-state solution in Palestine. And he came once they all agreed. Of course, why wouldn't they? So he went with that plan to China. So he discussed that with Emperor Qi. Okay, so he had a visit to China. In Russia, everybody is talking about how successful this visit was and what the friendship between Putin and Emperor Qi, and on and on, except one thing. There was no more words about the two-state solution. As Putin completely forgot, or Emperor told him, you, Vladimir Vladimirovich, shut up about this two-state solution. If you want to talk about it, I will let you know when to talk about it. Right now, just shut up. And indeed, there was no more suggestions, even single time from Putin about two-state solution. Why do you think China was not supportive of two-state solution?
It's really sort of a mystery to me why China would not be supportive of that, because right now the China does not appear to be in a mood to indefinitely support Russia's war against Ukraine, and because that eventually that puts China in a bad position vis-a-vis the rest of the world. Because eventually the rest of the world recognizes that, hey, China, why are you continuing to support this aggression against Ukraine? And the Chinese really don't have a good answer for that.
But they will have to answer sooner or later.
Oh yes,
they're not going forever.
They can't hide, and so that they can't hide there. They can't hide that, and so now they, as again, the initiative remains in Ukraine's hands. And
Sure.
I hate to sound like a broken record, but they have to stay. The Ukrainians have to stay focused on the main thing in this, which in this case is inflicting a significant enough operational defeat upon the Russians in order to compel them to accept a ceasefire. Now, not a negotiated peace, because the Russians are not going to be inclined to do that, but to compel them to accept a ceasefire, an armistice, which at least, and they can make all the excuses that they want. They can say in public, well, we've achieved the objective of our special military operation, and retreat back to their own borders. But as Ivan pointed out in an earlier program, there's going to be the problem of those occupied territories, that occupied portions of Ukraine, that will need to be occupied by Ukrainian forces again, and they will have to be stabilized. And if necessary, that's just a royal mess. And
listen, Jonathan, you were just talking about the numbers that the Ukrainians have to increase, and that's exactly what they did, whether it's Atakam's reason or not. But lately, they were eliminating about 5 sometimes 600 on a good day Russians. All of a sudden, I looked at Ukrainskaya Pravda yesterday. Number is 1,380 Russians, 55 tanks, 120 BMP, 39 artillery systems, and so on, and 33 transports, and so numbers are incredible. Again, I'm not suggesting that this is because of Atacams, but it just could be because they increased almost 2.5 times since last numbers what I've seen. So with this tempos, Jonathan, I think we will get, Ukrainian will get exactly what they need, and very, very quickly. So I think that we will have probably even better news by next week, Tuesday.
I should hope so.
And I'm looking, see you same place, same time. Hopefully Ivan will join us as usual. And on this time, please have a great weekend, and all the best to you and all our listeners.
You do the same.
Thank you.